land of their foremothers and forefathers. The camelote that my friend Iftu is wearing is made of silver in this case. By and large, very few women can afford silver, so for economic reasons, this has changed. Originally, these were all created by smiths using things like the Maria Teresa taller, and today they've been almost exclusively replaced by either beadwork or low-grade metal spooling, the kind of thing you could find in a hardware store. So the karma, the piece worn on the forehead, has shifted also. And so we'll focus now a little bit more on the ecological shift and turn our attention to Oda. Oda is the key cultural icon of transnational Oromo fashion. The symbol of the sycamore tree, embroidered onto factory-made clothes, woven into textiles and beaded into necklaces and headbands, has become a fashion statement that tangibly expressed the unstable conditions in Oromia since 2014. As the richest agricultural lands in Oromia are rapidly relinquished to foreign investors, and millions of Oromo farmers and pastoralists have lost not only their livelihood, but their access to land, the use of the sycamore tree was instrumental in the production of a pan-Oromo identity. The rise of the Oda symbol in men and women's fashion coincides with people's physical restrictions from Oda sites in the landscape. When asked about her Oda beaded headband, one woman from Wallo told me, quote, "When we wear this dress, we have our Oda back." Historian Badri Kabir Mohammed, who conducted research on Oda and Oromo philosophy, confirmed that Oda is significant for 4 reasons. First, the tree is always located at a water source, a symbol of fertility and the site of rituals of thanksgiving for prosperity and blessing. Secondly, Oda is unique in that the tree regenerates any loss to its trunk. In this manner, through forgiveness and prayer, the Oromo assembly always grows back and thrives in spite of the loss of a member. In addition, many varieties of plants flourish under the canopy of Oda. And in this vein, the Oromo support, protect, and sometimes adopt minorities and orphan family members in their midst. Lastly, the sycamore tree is unique in that its fruit ripens at different times. Birds eat the ripe fruit and drink water held in the unripe fruit. The tree is therefore sustaining to animals, plants, and humans who rely on them. It should be noted that when the fruit ripens, the fruit turns from green to yellow to red, the colors of the national banner of the ABO. Social media sites like Facebook have become the platform for exhibiting not only this flag imagery, but Oda dress styles worn during life cycle celebrations, fashion shows, holidays, and cultural events. As we are all well aware, Oromia is rich in fertile land, water resources, mineral deposits, and forests. Foreign corporations who are attracted to Ethiopia's low labor costs and corporate taxes and the unregulated use of pesticides have made Ethiopia one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Evicted household members who receive small compensation are now landless, often working in factories where they once owned farms. Further, the pollution generated by factories has had significant health effects. As a result, millions of farmers and pastoralists are experiencing land loss, food insecurity, a loss of livelihood, and water pollution. The use of Oda on Oromo dress parallels the performative protests against land confiscation, and this is not my image. Performance in Oromia is a profound expression of one's connection to the terrain. The blossoming of Oda imagery is the latest expression within this system. Further, the act of performing can also be viewed as an act of assertion of rights to land. For the Afrankalo, as Bonnie mentioned, the wearing and wrapping of the cloth belt, the sabata, specifically signifies the family's connection to land rights and fertility. One could argue that for some, this simple cloth is a tangible expression of an oral land deed that women bind and seal around their fertile bellies. The wrapping itself also becomes a kind of performance. The Afrankalo says Haromaitu, the mother of the Barentu and Barana, who was the first to bind her great midsection with sabata. Oromo oral tradition states that it was the responsibility of the Great Mother to divide the land for her 5 grandchildren. Haromaitu sat down in Perna and began to wind a sabata around her waist 5 times and bequeathed the land to her grandchildren. Young women watched attentively and followed her motions. As she encircled her waist, Carmichael prophesied the regional distribution of land for her grandsons, which with each wrap of the cloth, and you can read that on the slide. When women are given a sabata by their mothers at marriage, they repeat the actions of the Great Mother and their female ancestors before them, reenacting the migration narrative and instructing the watching children as they literally map the location where the aroma belong on the landscape. Many Barentuma men and women, especially those who have been forcibly displaced and no longer receive proper education in traditional law, may not consciously be aware that a woman's waistcloth functions as a symbolic land deed that legitimates parcels of land to be farmed and utilized for cattle grazing. However, the tying of a woman's sash is an important rite of passage during marriage, a time when oda is also most prominently worn. Whether or not the woman and her husband will ever be able to officially claim land as their own under current state legal procedures, they reenact this symbolic assertion of the right to inalienable land access inheritance. As places in Oromia are currently being partitioned and sold to outside investors, the visual tropes of the tree and the waistcloth are a means to link Oromo identity to the earth itself. Time is short, so I am going to begin to conclude. Performance is a crucial component in the reconstruction of history, in the shaping of a nationalist dialogue, and in the way that people make sense of their world. This is clearly seen in the potent image of a woman's stomach, which is marked and protected by the traditional belt sabata that encircles it. Today, it has also become a reference to the navel of Oromia, Finkene, that the Oromo would most like to protect. And with the most recent body adornments, designers have developed a clear, cultivated emblem that connects them symbolically to the lost land of their ancestors and memorializes state-sponsored violence in Ethiopia, including killings, imprisonments, and gross human rights violations. The unisex symbol of Oda, the sinke, has become a key marker as well as the emerging Oromo identity. This phenomenon illustrates how visual references to land that many people no longer have access to, can be symbolically claimed through performance. Performance is a tactile means of asserting a political identity and fighting an oppressive authoritative regime. Songs, stories, artworks, and dances not only demonstrate resistance, they can affect change directly. So bearing with me, I'm just going to bring Zoom back so the presenters will be here. We have a short video that we'll be showing, and we'll have 3 presentations that are about 50 minutes each. Some of the presenters, because we're running late today, may not. Oh, they're there. There they are. Okay, great. So, we're going to begin with our very short Sika MCC. This is where we may have trouble with sound. Let me just try. I'll play it back. Yeah, so we're not hearing it, and I know that there's something on the wall unit.
You should put up the volume from there.
Yeah, that's not.
It's not there. Maybe, yeah, that also helped.
I don't know. There was a technician here earlier who was able to fix it. We still have him. Or maybe Kalani's smart and knows how to.
And not just among women, but also among all human beings. Not just among human beings, but also with all animals and plants of the natural world and all other living and non-living beings in the cosmos. So sinke sisterhood is deep and broad.
So, what does sinke sisterhood mean to me? The first thing that pops into my head when I think of sinke is solidarity. And this is the word that embodies sinke for me. So, I imagine sinke sisterhood to be made of sisters, a network of sisters who are linked together by a strong bond and who stand together for one another. And this is a relationship that can be mobilized when a sister needs something and when she needs other sisters to stand up with her for whatever she needs.
To me, sinke sisterhood is like a forest ground. We nurture diverse indigenous women's knowledge that promotes and sustains justice, harmony, and well-being of ourselves, of communities, and broader environment, including Mother Earth.
Sinke is first and foremost a stick. But it's not just a stick, it's also an idea and an action. And for me personally, it is the greatest gift that Oromo women have given the world. The Sinke sisterhood is a movement not just to elevate women and to empower them in conflict resolution, aid them in their conditions of subordination and suffering, but it elevates their families, it elevates their communities. And I am so grateful to be part of this movement.
At its core, sinke sisterhood is a spiritual connection that binds us together in a meaningful, profound way. It goes beyond the biological relationship. That forges a state of being where we genuinely feel like sisters. One of the most beautiful aspects of sinke sisterhood is its aspiration to embrace diversity, differences, where each sister feels validated and valued.
Trust is at the heart of sinke sisterhood. Sisters count on each other, sisters rely on each other. Sinke sisterhood is where women stand in solidarity against all forms of injustice. It is organic solidarity based on shared experiences.
Thank you. So for this panel, the panel is titled The Praxis of Sinke Across Time and Space. We have 3 presenters who have pre-recorded their videos, pre-recorded their talks for us today. The video was made by Albi Ungashe. Just wanted to mention her, she's in our institute as well. And Aga Ruda will be the first to present. Aga is, actually, I think I have to get this, sorry, you have to look at my email. Her video was not, it's not working. Aga is presenting about my grandmother's story, Sinke's core principle of relationality.
Good morning and good afternoon. It's morning here where I'm at. I'm so pleased and I feel privileged to be part of this conference and especially part of the Sinke panel. My title slightly changed from what's printed on the schedule, but the content remains the same. So my title is Connected Reflection, My Grandmother's Story and sinke Core Principles of Relationality. At the sinke Institute, we uphold the basic principle of relationality, solidarity, and justice. We live by these principles in our transnational context, and we draw them from the deep wells of our Oromo foremothers sinke institution. In my storytelling or presentation, I will elaborate on the principles of relationality using my grandmother's story. For us, relationality means the relationship of mutual empathy, mutual care, and reciprocity with all human beings, and with all animals and plants, and with Hada, Dachi, or Hadalafa, the Mother Earth, the natural environment, the waters, the air, the fire, and the heavenly bodies. The principle of relationality is not alien to me. It's like a second nature, deeply embodied in me by my grandmother, Ako Balfe. From the tender years of my childhood, I learned them from watching Ako's praxis. When I say Ako's praxis, I mean a holistic way of being in a world where the philosophy and the theories of life are inseparably intertwined with the practice of everyday living. Let me introduce you to my Ako. My maternal grandmother, Ako Balfi, was a woman before her time. She was deeply spiritual, fiercely independent, and resilient. She was abducted at the young age in an act of forced marriage. She killed one of her abductors and subsequently arrested, convicted, and thrown into jail. After serving some time, she was pardoned and she let out and she went home, only to be given away yet into another marriage that she wasn't happy about. This time, though, she was given away by her own parents. My grandmother was very unhappy in the marriage. She was miserable. So shortly after my mother was born, she she ran away. She moved into a remote village, and she started living by herself. She converted into Christianity, and she became a nun. This was a time when divorce was unthinkable and unmarried women were highly stigmatized and despised. So becoming a nun gave my grandmother a refuge and a covering. The only resource was coming. My grandmother did not speak nor understood the church language, so she could not fully embrace it. So she had to continue practicing her foremothers' religion and spiritual practices that she knew. Let me share some of the core practices and beliefs that I observed around growing up. One of her beliefs was around the earth. My grandmother referred to as Amalapa or Papadachi, the Mother Earth. Alcohol had a deep spiritual connection to the land or to the earth, and she believed in the existence of Papadachi or Papadachi. And Mother was eager, a guardian, and a provider, a co-redeemer, and praised Mother Earth. She had so many customs and performed rituals in her celebration. One of the songs that I vividly remember to this day that I love is Black Tree, Black America. And it goes like this. Black Tree, Black America, meditating on Genesis 14, 7, 9, Holy Severan, Yaki, being so well so to use and gifted. Oh, the Mother Earth, your beneath is water. The grain the grain we harvest on you, all over you we prosper and spread. We are buried in you, rich or poor. You are the equalizer. So my grandmother um, taught us as children to be very kind, very gentle to the Had Alafa. She believed Mother Earth or Had Alafa deserves peace, tranquility, rest. So every day at noontime, she would tell us children not to jump, recklessly, not to make noises, not to strike the ground, because she believed that's a resting time and the Mother Earth deserves some rest. She also performed rituals, Ibayu. Ibayu, as you know, it's a communal celebration, but I also observed my grandmother would do it just by herself, where she would take pieces from all the grains she harvested and she goes under a big, I think it was a dambi tree, and she offers in prayers. Um, for all the blessing God has given her. And she would leave those grains under the tree for the animals to feed on. So another thing I observed also is my grandmother knew most of the plants and trees around her, and she would teach us, and she would teach us games so that we learn the trees and the plants around in our environment. One such game that I remember was Mukimiko, Malfa, Abeyi, Malfa, Kentu, Malfa, Oda, and then it goes on. You have to recite it fast, and that's how we learn, and also what the functions are, and so on and so forth. The same for animals. Binobini, Samalfa, Lane, Samalfa, Terrors, and it goes on. This would teach kids memory games. It also teach them about the animals in their environment and the kind of animals they are. Um, Animals, of all the animals, cows are also deeply loved and celebrated. I watch not just my grandmother, but the women in the village celebrating a female cow. When the cow gives birth, the baby, the calf and the mother is celebrated. They call it Tower Avenue ritual, where the women in the village would come together and they anoint, they put butter and they feed the baby and they sing and they have things that they recite in thanksgiving to God and also thanking in the cow and the baby. They do the same thing for the male cow, where probably I'm sure some of the people my age or older who grew up in the villages, you may know this is how they celebrated the cows, the male cows. There is a cow on Iya saya saya kunung menunggu saya ke setiyo ke saya ketiyo. It's a beautiful song. It's a long one. So that's how they really celebrated. My grandmother also really was very connected and loved birds. She she thought that birds are spiritual beings and that they speak to her and she was able to communicate and she believed that the birds would tell her like when some dangers are looming. And one particular bird that she loved and she had adored and she had songs for was Sindra Asabala, the Asabala bird. And she has songs and my grandmother believed this particular song would take her prayers to God. So the song goes like that, Asabali, Kuramalaho, Aramanala, Atanisa, Bilingal Masajid Jalisa, Utuli, Chavi Chavi, Uli, Uli, Chagadan, Ramanaho, Ramanawa, Anisa, Belinda, Mazalda, Teresa. So, roughly translated, Asabane, Ramale, Ramanawa, Anisa, Belinda, Mazalda, Teresa. So, roughly translated, oh, Asabane, my black and white, tell me the direction of the abode of our going forth. Is dwelling ground. A stick may break, the trashing stick of party breaks not. Vanished may be, praying people may not vanish, vanish not. So this is how connected my grandmother and for that matter, people during those days were really environment in a respectful, kind, mutual, reciprocal way. So my grandmother even cared for the tiniest creature, the ants. Ants. When they come in, she would tell us to let them out gently. She using it's a green tree leaf. Just like tap them and tell them, oh baya, 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 oh baya. So that's how the mutual interaction was based on respect and respect. So another one I remember watching my grandmother was her celebration of the ancestors. And she would do what she would do is she had what she called uh, almado. Almado is a fire. It's a fire burning every week on a Saturday night. She prepares a room, every area in the house. So she burned a fire and she cleansed in the area. She believed the fire will cleanse in the home and cleanse in the air so that the departed, the ancestors would come back home and enjoy and be, and, their presence are felt. I've learned recently this almado, the fire burning is really it's also celebrated in monthly, yearly, and it's connected to the Maskal burn, like Ibida Maskala, now kind of distorted, but that's what it's the connection. I have to yet learn more about that. But fire is also really very important. Consider that it cleanses. We all know that during the Miska time they take a chupo and go into the house, go libas to clean and cleanse the home. The same for water. Water is really very important in the Oromo culture. And one thing I remember when I was young was the 5 days at the end of every year where we have to wake up early in the morning and go to a river to cleanse every single day for those 5 days. It's a ritual to cleanse our body, our spirit, and prepare for the coming new year. So in conclusion, what I've learned, we lost such a beautiful cultural and religious practices. We had such a holistic and all-inclusive tradition that's based on mutual empathy, mutual respect, and mutual care. Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of AGA. We'll save questions till the end. I'd like to go ahead and go to our next speaker, Martha Kue Kumsa, whose title is the Tumsa Sinke Across Time and Space.
Thank you for the opportunity to present on Tumsa Sinke Across Time and Space. And I'm asked.
My apologies, I'm not. There we go.
Articulation, women's articulation of constructing the future. I have a couple of disclaimers. In the first place, we don't construct the future. We prefigure the future at the Sinke Institute. What that means is it's different from constructing the future. Prefiguring the future is calling that future that we imagined into the here and now and live it in the moment. So we prefigure the future we imagine and bring it here and live it. So that's one. The other disclaimer is we don't construct the future in the Sinke Institute, because there is no single future for us. For us, there is a multiplicity of futures. So we construct multiple futures. That's how we reframe that. The other disclaimer is related to the Oromo struggle. There is vibes around me. People talk about how we are not liberated yet, even though there were decades and decades of Oromo national liberation struggle. We are still in colonial relationships. Why? Where did we go wrong? And they think that the solution comes from the women. It must be the men who are holding us back. There must be solution with the women, especially with the Sinke Institute, Sinke women who reclaim our foremothers' emancipatory project of struggle for emancipation, struggle for liberation, struggle for justice. I just want to say that there's no panacea at the Sinke Institute. The Sinke Institute doesn't have the solution. The Sinke Institute itself is emergent institutions trying to come out of these colonial relationships. Excuse me. And if women are as immersed in colonial relations as much as men are, so if there is a path leading out of this, it should be a joint path, a joint struggle for all of us. Men, women, this region, that region, this religion, that religion. It must be a shared project of emancipation. There is no tiny corner of emancipation when everybody is immersed in that relationships. It has to be a joint project. That said, then I want to go to my presentation, which is Tumsa Sinke across time and space. I look at how our foremothers practiced it and developed it, this beautiful system of struggle, of strategy of solidarity for thousands of years in the context in which they lived, which is different, like day and night, from our context. So how do we reclaim that and bring it into this context and live it, reframe it and relive it in our context for our suffering, to address our own suffering. So when our foremothers practiced it, we call it praxis. We don't say practice, because for them and for us here, practice is not different from the philosophy, from the ontology, from the values and beliefs that they embody. Practice is part and parcel of their philosophy, part and parcel of their everyday being in the world. So what they do is whatever they do it within the context of their ontology, the beliefs and the philosophies that they are embodied with. So if you take one tiny practice, it is all woven into all of these different aspects of their life. It's a holistic process. It's not just practice and theory. We are told this is practice and this is theory. They have nothing to do with each other. One follows from the other. That is not the case. practice and theory are interwoven. They are interwoven parts of the holistic practice. So that's how they practice, and that's why we say praxis instead of practice. And when they practiced, the Oromo, the entire Oromo society, and men and women alike, they rallied together because they sanctioned this women's struggle. There are three fundamental principles. One is the principle of relationality that we reclaim from our foremothers. Principle of relationality, and relationality means we are all our relations, all the relationships that we are woven from are the ones that make us who we are. So the primacy of relationships. For us, it is also Safu, that relationship, that intricate, interwoven multiplicity of relationships that are woven together in checks and balances and harmony. That is the fundamental truth. And these are egalitarian relationships. These relationships are given by Waka. Waka created everything and everybody in the entire cosmos, living and non-living beings, and woven them into this Safu, into this balance, checks and balances of harmony. And that is what we call Safu. And we don't just take Safu as others theorized and handed down to us. We take it, we critically engage it, and we make it our own, bend it and indigenize it into our own reality. So it speaks to our reality. So that is the fundamental truth, which is Safu. That's the premise of everything. Everything is premised on that. And then if that is disrupted, and it is constantly, that egalitarian relationship is constantly disrupted and unsettled by relations of domination, relations of authoritarianism. Therefore, women have the sacred duty to restore Safu. And when the woman, if we talk about just gender, if there is an imbalance in the gender relations, the woman picks up her sinke, raises it, and screams or ululates. Why does she do that? She does that because she knows somebody is going to come in solidarity for her. Somebody is going to stand in solidarity and support her, because she is not talking about just herself and her hurt and harm. She is talking about the brokenness of Safu. Safu must be restored. So, and people come, women come, men come, and they have to restore Safu together. Society sanctions the woman's urination, and she urinates because she knows society is with her. Society is going to come for her and stand in solidarity with her. So that is the principle of solidarity. When the fundamental balance, fundamental truth of Safu is disrupted, she screams. And people come in solidarity with her. The struggle ensues immediately, and people come in solidarity. So they have to restore Safu, because restoring Safu is in how restoring Safu. It's a part of the entire society, not just for women. Men have to abide by that. They have to agree to all of that. That's how they restore Safu together. And then what is the goal of the struggle? Is restoring Safu. And restoring Safu means repairing and mending those relationships that were broken when the injustice happened. So restoring those relationships lead to justice. So the restoration of Safu is the ultimate goal of the struggle, which is justice. And it is healing as well. In many indigenous cultures, justice is imagined and envisioned as healing, because injustice breaks the soul, injustice breaks the bones, injustice wounds people, wounds relationships. So those relationships, when they are wounded, they have to be repaired and mended and healed. So 3 fundamental principles: the fundamental truth, which is Safu, which is the premise of everything, and the solidarity, which is needed for the struggle to restore Safu, and then the restoration of Safu, which is justice. So these 3 principles are what we take from our foremothers. But even in my generation, even after Gada declined, the superimposition of colonial relations and colonial structures on the indigenous Gada relationships, indigenous egalitarian relationships of that fundamental Safu. Safu is broken by that colonial imposition. But during that colonial imposition, it was easier for men to rise up the ladder of colonial hierarchy. But that wasn't so for women. So women are left behind. When the Oromo national liberation struggle started, it was from the recognition that women are left behind. And it is an emancipatory project. It was an emancipatory project initially, because they came out and declared that we fight all forms of oppression, including gender oppression. Gender relations have to be mended. So when it started out, it was a fight against all forms of oppression. That's the Oromo liberation struggle. And we all joined in, because we're going to fight all forms of oppression, gender, class, whatever. Everything is going to be, we are going to be liberated from all of those. So we joined in everything. But at one point, I don't know when, that emancipatory project of Oromo national liberation struggle was reduced to just one dimension of it. That holistic dimension of it is gone. It became Oromo nationalism. And when it is Oromo nationalism, it is gender is forgotten. Other forms of oppression are all forgotten. Of course, it is assumed that when the nation is liberated, everybody will be liberated, but it's not so. But the Oromo National Liberation said, without the emancipation of women, there is no emancipation of the nation. There is no national liberation without the emancipation of women. That was the thing, the belief at the beginning, the initial. But then, when it turned got reduced into just nationalism, that's when we lost the holistic aspect of the liberation struggle. The liberation aspect of that struggle, the liberation is plucked out of it, and it became just another nationalism. It could be like the Amhara nationalism, it could be like Nazi nationalism, fascistic nationalism. We have no way of distinguishing our nationalism from others when the liberation aspect of it is plucked out of it. So Oromo national liberation activists and elites and theorists and academicians, scholars, need to have a big hard look at themselves and say, where did we go wrong? What did we do wrong? How did we reduce a holistic struggle into one? And on that one, we all fight with all of these nationalist struggles. Ours was not so. So we need to really, if we really need, look to come out of our predicament, we need to look at where we went wrong. That's the start of authoritarianism, when the colonial imposition on the indigenous relationships, that's when authoritarianism started, and it grew into the national liberation movements. So we need to look at that. So what we're doing when we're reclaiming the sinke principles, the three sinke principles into our Sinke Institute, we look at ways of decolonizing ourselves. So Sinke Institute, by its very name, is a radical critique of colonialism, a radical critique of nationalism, a radical critique of authoritarianism. So when we reclaim these three basic principles, we reclaim them within this context, the context in which we find ourselves today, the context where patriarchy, racism, white supremacy, capitalism, and colonialism interweave in order to create this big global family of nations, the global order, the world order is woven from all of these interwoven forms of oppression. So we are radically critiquing all of these forms of oppression. So when we engage in struggle, we engage with other indigenous peoples of the world. We are in a context where all indigenous peoples come and live with us. We have indigenous peoples in the lands where we live. Our struggle is not soul struggle. It is indigenous struggle that is really these three principles that we found, that we reclaim from Sinke, is practiced by other women. For example, the Quechua women in Peru, the indigenous women there. We call it Sinke solidarity. They call it walking together. And in all of these other indigenous contexts, the relationality we talk about in Canada, the indigenous people call it all our relations. We are all our relations. So that holistic piece is missing in our struggle. And what we're trying to do is connect to these indigenous spaces, local to local, local to global, and create a solidarity of sisterhood. So that is our Sinke sisters. And to do that, we don't find theories helpful, or these theories, whether they come from the East or the West, or whether they come from capitalism or socialism, they are not helpful. They don't speak to our reality. So what we do is go to our stories, to our foremothers' stories, to our mothers' stories. Stories are packed with theories, indigenous theories. They are the deep wells of indigenous knowledge system. So instead of searching for theories that don't help us, in fact, theories that keep our people down, we go to our stories. I love how Aga went to her grandmother's story. I am raised by my grandmother too, and I have all those wonderful stories that are part with our series. We get our series from our stories, and we practice relationality across indigenous populations. And that's our invited Sinke Institute. And thank you for listening.